The video shows Ariel being treated, her head bandaged. This is the moment a responding officer arrives to the grisly aftermath of a cliffside attack and sees Gerhardt Konig appearing to struggle to walk. Two nurses hiking that day help her. Police body cam video playing out in front of the jury for the first time. Prosecutors say it's another key piece of evidence supporting their case that a Maui doctor tried to kill his wife.
Hey guys. Look at Gerhardt Konig sobbing uncontrollably on the witness stand. It looks like a man completely broken, right? But viewers watching the trial closely noticed something disturbing. He is putting on a massive show, but there is not a single real tear falling from his eyes. Remember, this is the same man who stood on a cliff covered in blood, FaceTiming his 19-year-old son to confess that he just tried to kill his stepmother. Now, he is sitting in court claiming his tiny wife viciously attacked him first. So here's the question I can't stop thinking about. Is this guy a desperate husband fighting for his life, or a cold-blooded narcissist trying to manipulate a jury? What I found was, when you watch the first 30 minutes of his direct examination, it is absolutely wild. This is a man sitting on the witness stand facing a charge of attempted second-degree murder, a severe crime that carries a massive prison sentence. He is literally on trial for his life. But instead of looking terrified or solemn or even just serious, he steps up there looking incredibly chirpy, happy, and upbeat. It is honestly shocking to watch. He starts off looking and sounding exactly like an enthusiastic contestant on a television game show. He is smiling, he is perky, he is excessively friendly, and he seems to be genuinely enjoying his time as the main star of the show. He looks over at the jury when answering his attorney's questions, as though he has been called as a highly credentialed, expert witness, not the actual defendant. His defense attorney asks him to go through his educational background, and man, he just absolutely loves talking about it. He excitedly details his entire impressive resume from the very beginning. He tells the court how he moved from South Africa, went to college, and worked as a bioengineer doing complex tissue engineering for 5 full years before even going to medical school. He constantly boasts about going to a top university to become an anesthesiologist, doing an intense fellowship program, and then taking a job where he was not just a clinician but an assistant professor, teaching new medical residents. He talks about it all with so much visible pride, as if he is actively trying to impress absolutely everyone in the courtroom with his massive intellect. The whole thing feels exactly like a corporate job interview. He is so full of himself and completely in love with his own resume. People watching the trial live on the internet were completely blown away by this very bizarre behavior. If you read through what people are saying online, there is a massive consensus about his underlying psychology. Viewers immediately pointed out strong indicators that he is a classic cerebral narcissist. For those who do not know, a cerebral narcissist is a very specific type of narcissist who derives their entire sense of superiority from their high intellect and professional achievements, rather than their physical appearance. The cerebral part is all about needing to be the absolute smartest guy in the entire room. He truly loves himself above anything else in the entire world. You can see it in his eyes. He actually thinks his carefully crafted story and his prestigious background will convince everyone to just let him walk completely free. He internally congratulates himself on his brilliant performance, practically breathless with excitement at how incredibly well he thinks he is explaining absolutely everything. He fully believes he is so smart that he can just smoothly talk his way out of a brutal, attempted murder charge. It is the pure arrogance of a man who firmly thinks his medical degree makes him completely untouchable. You know, when you sit back and watch this guy essentially brag about his career accomplishments, it really makes your stomach turn. You have to remember the serious context of why he is sitting in that chair. His wife suffered horrific trauma. She was viciously beaten in the head with a heavy rock. She survived a brutal, terrifying attack on the very edge of a steep cliff. She had to be saved by two innocent bystanders, and while she is dealing with those severe physical and emotional injuries, the man accused of doing it is sitting in a court of law, looking perfectly calm, cool as a cucumber, and eagerly making sure the jury knows just how incredibly successful he is. It is completely tone-deaf. It is almost as if he completely forgot that this is a serious criminal trial about a violent attack, not an award ceremony celebrating his life achievements. The total lack of basic human empathy is glaring. He seems entirely detached from the grim reality of the violence he is accused of committing. He just wants validation and admiration, even while fighting for his own personal freedom. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Does this make sense to you? Is this how an innocent, traumatized victim acts? Here's the thing. When you watch the trial footage closely, you notice an immediate, massive shift in his behavior the absolute second his defense attorney asks him to recount the physical altercation. Literally minutes earlier, this man was completely upbeat, chipper, and thoroughly enjoying talking about his own professional resume. But the moment he has to explain how his wife ended up with severe, bloody injuries on that cliff, his entire demeanor completely flips. His voice suddenly gets extremely low and shaky. He starts letting out these long, heavy sighs that echo loudly through the courtroom microphone. He constantly runs his hands through his hair, staring down at the floor like a man completely overwhelmed by devastating trauma. Then comes the tissue performance. He grabs a tissue and starts aggressively blowing his nose, making these huge, dramatic, sniffling sounds. He covers his face, shoulders heaving, trying to paint the perfect picture of a devastated husband who was simply forced to defend himself. But if you take a closer look and zoom right in on his face during this supposed breakdown, you will notice something incredibly disturbing. Thousands of people watching the live stream online pointed out the exact same horrifying detail. Despite all the loud sniffling, all the heavy breathing, and all the aggressive face wiping with the tissue, his eyes are completely dry. There is not a single drop of moisture in his eyes. There are absolutely no real tears falling down his cheeks. He is putting on this massive theatrical performance, contorting his facial muscles to look like he is in agonizing pain. But his body is completely failing to produce the actual physiological response of crying. The true crime community immediately flooded the comment sections, calling him out for these crocodile tears. It is a totally fake, calculated display of sorrow meant entirely to manipulate the jury into feeling sympathy for him. He wants everyone to believe he is the victim, but his own dry eyes completely betray his elaborate act. I gotta be honest, watching him do this makes me feel completely sick to my stomach. It is absolutely chilling to see someone who can switch their emotions on and off as easily as flipping a light switch, just to put on a show for a jury. Real trauma does not work like that. You do not go from cheerfully bragging about your medical degrees to suddenly sobbing without a single tear in the span of 3 minutes. His ability to fake this level of distress shows a deeply manipulative mind. He knows exactly what a grieving, traumatized victim is supposed to look like, so he is trying his hardest to mimic those behaviors. But because he lacks any genuine empathy or real remorse for what he did to his wife, he cannot generate the actual tears to match his loud sobbing. He is treating the courtroom like a theater stage and the jury as his personal audience. It is an insult to the intelligence of everyone watching, and it is a massive insult to his wife, who actually lived through the horrific nightmare he is now using as a convenient script to save his own skin. The sheer arrogance it takes to sit under oath and fake cry when a woman almost lost her life is completely beyond my comprehension. He genuinely thinks he is outsmarting every single person in that room. He believes that if he just makes enough noise and acts distressed enough, people will ignore the physical evidence and believe his completely absurd story. Watching this unfold in real time reveals exactly who he really is behind the fancy professional title and the expensive suits. He is a person who calculates every single move to protect his own self-interest. The constant sniffing and the hiding behind a small white tissue only highlights the profound emptiness behind his carefully rehearsed words. We all see right through this terrible performance, and it only makes the reality of his actions seem that much more dark and malicious. His act is failing miserably. The internet sees it clearly. The courtroom sees it. Now, we just have to hope the jury sees it too. Am I the only one who finds this weird? Did anyone actually see a real teardrop? Let me know down below. Let us break down the exact story Gerhardt Konig is actually trying to sell to the jury about what happened up on that treacherous Hawaiian cliff. According to his highly rehearsed testimony, his wife Ariel suddenly lured him right to the very edge of the steep drop-off to take a selfie. He falsely claims that right after they took the picture, she secretly shoved him in the back, trying to push him completely over the side. When he caught his balance and turned around to confront her, he says she suddenly started screaming for help out of nowhere. Then, according to him, this tiny woman forcefully wrestled him down to the solid ground. He testified under oath that she wrapped her legs around him, tightly grabbed his testicles with one hand, and then magically found a rock with her other hand to repeatedly smash him in the face. He swears to the jury that he only fought back and hit her twice with the rock because he was acting purely in self-defense to stop her vicious assault. The crazy thing is, the physical mechanics of this wild story absolutely defy basic human logic and common sense. We are talking about a massive, incredibly strong man being allegedly overpowered by a much smaller, unarmed woman. Just picture the sheer physics required for this supposed attack. How could a tiny woman completely subdue a large doctor, hold his testicles in a death grip with one hand, and somehow still have the leverage and strength to reach around, grab a heavy rock, and repeatedly bash him in the head with her other free hand? It sounds like a ridiculous action movie script. The internet is already mocking this absurd narrative, calling her a ninja wife. Furthermore, if she was truly attacking him as brutally as he claims, why did the police only find minor scratches and a tiny bruise on him? Meanwhile, she had massive, life-threatening lacerations all over her head and face that required intense medical intervention. His minor injuries do not match the catastrophic battle he is describing. This brings us to a massive, glaring piece of digital evidence that completely unravels his entire self-defense narrative. If you remember the forensic examination of his laptop, detectives discovered that he had been heavily searching Reddit for a very specific psychological term. That term is DARVO. For those who do not know, DARVO stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. It is a well-known manipulation tactic used by RARs when they are finally confronted with their own terrible behavior. First, they completely deny that the ever happened. Then, they viciously attack the actual victim for attempting to hold them accountable. Finally, they completely reverse the roles, claiming that they are the true victims and that the actual victim is the real R. He literally researched this exact manipulation tactic online before the attack even happened. And now, he is sitting right there on the witness stand, executing a textbook DARVO strategy in real time in front of the entire world. He denies pushing her. He attacks her character by constantly bringing up the affair to make her look like a terrible person. And he reverses the victim and offender roles by claiming that this tiny woman orchestrated a massive, ninja-style ambush against him on the edge of a cliff. He is taking his own violent, premeditated actions and projecting them entirely onto the woman he almost killed. It is a chilling realization when you connect his internet search history to the exact words coming out of his mouth in the courtroom. He is not just lying. He is following a calculated, step-by-step psychological playbook that he studied in advance. Watching him confidently deliver this fabricated tale is truly sickening. He genuinely believes that his superior intellect will easily blind the courtroom to the obvious truth. He assumes everyone listening is completely oblivious to his dark, underlying intentions. However, his own arrogance is his biggest flaw. He thinks the jury will fall for his manipulative reversal. But the physical evidence and the extreme absurdity of his ninja wife story speak for themselves. The problem is, if you look closely at his explanation for the Patagonia bag he brought up the mountain, it completely falls apart. During his direct examination, Gerhardt Konig confidently testified that this specific bag was just his normal on-call work bag. He claimed that because he is an anesthesiologist who frequently takes emergency call shifts from his house, he always keeps this bag fully stocked and right by the front door or in his car. According to his highly rehearsed story, bringing a bag filled with medical-grade syringes, intravenous saline solutions, and emergency airway equipment on a casual birthday hiking trip with his wife was completely obvious and totally routine. He acted as if every single doctor just casually carries hospital supplies up a dangerous, windy cliff. He told the jury he had just finished a 24-hour shift at the hospital, so the bag was naturally just with him. He was trying to make it sound like the most ordinary thing in the entire world. But wait, the internet did not buy this ridiculous story for a single second. Almost immediately after he made these claims on the witness stand, there was an absolutely explosive reaction from the online true crime community, especially from actual medical professionals. Registered nurses, scrub technicians, and fellow anesthesiologists flooded the comment sections and social media platforms to completely tear his testimony to shreds. They loudly pointed out the strict regulations surrounding the handling of medical equipment and banned substances. Specifically, they brought up the federal law regarding controlled substances. Under this strict legislation, doctors are absolutely not allowed to just pack controlled substances, potent sedatives, or hospital-specific medications into a personal backpack and take them out of the highly regulated hospital or clinic environment. Those medications must be strictly tracked, securely locked up, and thoroughly documented. You do not just toss them into a Patagonia bag and take them on a recreational hike in the sweltering Hawaiian heat. It is a massive violation of federal medical protocols. Furthermore, the medical professionals watching the trial highlighted another glaring issue with his defense. They pointed out the severe violation of basic preservation and sterilization principles. Operating rooms demand the highest possible level of cleanliness. Doctors and nurses spend an incredible amount of time scrubbing in, sterilizing their hands, and ensuring the surgical environment is completely free of any dangerous bacteria. Why in the world would a practicing anesthesiologist drag a germ-infested outdoor hiking bag covered in dirt and sweat from a mountain trail back into a sterile operating room or a labor and delivery ward? It simply does not make any logical sense. No sane, responsible medical professional would ever carry a hospital emergency bag on a rugged outdoor hiking trip with their family. The risks of contamination, temperature degradation for the medications, and simply losing the items are far too high. When you combine the strict federal laws with the basic rules of medical hygiene, his entire narrative completely collapses. The viewers watching this trial unfold asserted that this was not just a case of a doctor forgetting to unpack his work bag. They strongly believe this points directly to premeditated murder. The prevailing theory online is that he intentionally packed those specific medical tools, particularly the syringes, with a very dark and calculated plan in mind. He knew exactly what he was doing when he brought that bag to the isolated edge of the cliff. He wanted to use his specialized medical knowledge to incapacitate his wife silently and efficiently. The medical bag was not an accident. It was a murder kit disguised as an everyday work accessory. His arrogance made him believe He could easily explain it away using his impressive job title, but the actual medical community saw right through his blatant lies. They refused to let him use their honorable profession as a shield for his horrific, violent actions against his completely unsuspecting wife. He thought he was the smartest guy in the room, but he completely underestimated the collective intelligence of the internet. Everyone sees the terrifying truth hidden deep inside that suspicious medical bag today. We will never stop seeking justice for her. Let me know down below, any nurses or doctors watching, is it normal to take an anesthesia bag hiking? And then, we must talk about what happened immediately after the bloody physical struggle on the edge of that steep cliff. Instead of dialing 911 to get emergency medical help for his wife, Gerhardt Konig ran away and hid in the dense bushes for 8 solid hours. But he did make one specific phone call. He pulled out his cell phone and FaceTimed his 19-year-old son, Emil. During this call, his face and shirt were covered in bright red blood. He told his teenage son that he was standing on a high cliff and planning to jump to his death. But the absolute most crucial part of this criminal case came when Emil bravely took the witness stand to testify for the prosecution. Emil sat in that tense courtroom and clearly stated to the jury exactly what he heard through the phone. He testified that his father explicitly said, "I just tried to kill your stepmother today." It was a powerful and devastating moment. The boy refused to even look in the direction of his father. Instead of calling him dad, Emil coldly referred to him as the defendant throughout his testimony. It was a profound statement of severed trust, a son breaking away from a father who put him in an impossible, traumatic situation. This is where it gets wild, because Gerhardt actually takes the witness stand right after his son and attempts to rewrite this painful reality. He sits there, calm, and calmly claims that his 19-year-old son simply misunderstood the conversation. According to Gerhardt, he was not confessing to attempted murder at all. Instead, he asserts that he was only muttering to himself in a state of extreme emotional shock. He claims that because the wind was howling loudly on the cliff, and because he was supposedly just talking to himself, his son misheard him. He tells the jury that his actual words were, "She said I tried to kill her." Let us really pause and think about the absolute audacity of this specific defense strategy. He is sitting in a court of law, staring directly at the judge and the jury, and he is publicly gaslighting his own son in front of the world. He is trying to make this poor, traumatized child appear as though he is just a confused kid who misheard a few mumbled words during a stressful phone call. Gaslighting is a manipulative psychological tactic where a person deliberately makes someone else question their own memory, their own perception, and their own basic sanity. By testifying this way, Gerhardt is employing this exact tactic against his own flesh and blood on national television. He refuses to take any accountability for the horror he inflicted upon his family. Instead, he is willing to throw his own son under the bus just to create a tiny fraction of reasonable doubt for the jury. When Emil testified, you could feel the silence in the room. It took immense courage for a teenager to sit a few feet away from the man who raised him and tell the truth. Emil carried the burden of knowing his words could send his father to prison. Yet, he spoke with clarity. He did not stutter. He firmly stated the exact terrifying words his father spoke into that phone camera. Then, Gerhardt uses his time on the stand to invalidate his son. He weaponizes his calm speaking voice to make his son look unreliable. He tries to paint a picture where Emil is just a panicked teenager who let his imagination run wild. It is a masterful, yet disturbing, display of psychological manipulation. He expects the jury to believe that an intelligent 19-year-old boy could somehow magically confuse a direct murder confession with a quiet, innocent mumble. It is absurd and offensive. The sheer cruelty required to sit under oath and look at a jury while discrediting your own child is staggering. He proves once again that his own self-preservation matters more than anything else in the universe, including the well-being of his own children. It is truly sickening. What do you guys think? How heartbreaking is it to watch a father gaslight his own son on national television? At the same time, people watching the live broadcast of this highly publicized criminal trial started to notice something extremely strange and almost comical happening on their screens. The defense attorney, the man who is literally paid to guide his client smoothly through his direct examination, is constantly interrupting Gerhardt Konig. Usually, when a defendant decides to take the witness stand in their own defense, their lawyer will ask broad and open questions. The goal is usually to let the defendant look at the jury and tell their own personal story in their own words to build sympathy and trust. But here, in this specific courtroom, the dynamic is completely backwards. The defense attorney looks visibly stressed and incredibly anxious. He is constantly jumping in, rushing to cut off the doctor before he can even finish his sentences. This behavior from the lawyer tells us that he is completely terrified of what his own client might say next. He knows the danger. Every single time the doctor speaks, the tension thickens considerably. It is an absolute disaster to watch, and the internet observers were quick to point out how incredibly awkward the entire exchange felt. What gets me is, the defense lawyer is constantly asking blatant leading questions, to the point where he is essentially testifying on behalf of the defendant. Instead of asking what happened next, the lawyer will spin a long, detailed, and carefully constructed narrative, feeding the exact answers he wants straight into the microphone. After delivering these lengthy paragraphs of information, the lawyer is only requiring Gerhardt to answer with a simple yes or a simple no. It almost looks like a desperate father trying to guide a stubborn toddler through a difficult conversation. The attorney is practically begging his client through his body language to just agree with the predetermined statement and absolutely stop talking. You can physically see the tension radiating from the defense table every single time Gerhardt takes a breath to speak. The reason for this bizarre legal strategy is actually quite simple, and it all comes back to his deep psychological flaws. Gerhardt is a textbook, narcissistic verbal rambler. He simply talks way too much for his own good. Because he is so incredibly arrogant and so hopelessly in love with the sound of his own voice, he firmly believes that he can outsmart every single person sitting in that room. He genuinely thinks that if he just keeps explaining his twisted logic, everyone will eventually agree with him and see him as the ultimate victim. However, the exact opposite is happening. Every single time he opens his mouth and goes completely off the script, he ends up incriminating himself even further. He goes on these long, winding tangents, attempting to justify his controlling behavior and his horrible actions, but he only succeeds in showing the jury his true, dark colors. He reveals his complete lack of empathy and his overwhelming obsession with his own reputation. The situation is so incredibly bad for the defense that the prosecuting attorneys do not even need to stand up and object to his wild testimony. Typically, a prosecutor will aggressively object to leading questions or narrative answers to disrupt the defense and protect their case. But in this specific case, the prosecution is just sitting back quietly, calmly watching the absolute train wreck unfold in real time. They realize that they do not need to intervene because Gerhardt is doing all of their heavy lifting for them. They are more than happy to just let him expose his own overwhelming guilt directly to the jury. The defense lawyer knows this too, which is exactly why he is sweating under the bright courtroom lights, desperately trying to put a tight lid on his own client. It is a lawyer's absolute worst nightmare brought to life on national television. You spend months preparing a case, only to watch your client destroy it simply because his ego will not allow him to stay quiet. The satire of this brilliant doctor just completely sinking his own legal defense through pure arrogance is something no screenwriter could ever invent. It is raw, unscripted reality, and the audience cannot look away. Am I the only one who noticed the lawyer panicking? Did he try to shut his own client up? So, we are finally here at the end of this massive deep dive into the testimony of Gerhardt Konig, and I gotta be honest, it has been a wild ride. When you look back at everything we have covered, from that very first moment he stepped onto the witness stand, it is just so clear why everyone watching this trial is so incredibly furious right now. What I found was that people are not just mad because of the horrific crime itself, but they are disgusted by the way he tried to manipulate every single person in that courtroom. You know, his arrogance was on full display from the very first second. He spent over 30 minutes bragging about his prestigious career as an anesthesiologist while his wife was sitting there with permanent scars from the rock he used to hit her over and over again. It was just so tone deaf and so incredibly disrespectful to the actual victim in this case. He acted like he was at a celebration of his own life, rather than a criminal trial for attempted murder. Like he really thought he was the star. And then we absolutely have to talk about those crocodile tears again. Here is the thing, when a person is truly hurting, you see it in their eyes. You see the moisture, you see the redness, you see the soul. But with Gerhardt, it was all sound and no substance. He was sniffling and blowing his nose loudly into those tissues, creating all this drama, but like I said before, his eyes stayed completely dry the entire time. Thousands of you guys in the comment sections noticed it immediately. It was a theatrical performance. It was a total act meant to sway the jury. And then, he had the nerve to blame Ariel for the entire event. He tried to sell this completely ridiculous ninja wife story where she somehow overpowered a large, strong man and held him in a death grip while he was just a helpless victim. It was absurd. It was insulting to our intelligence. And it really showed how much he thinks he can get away with just because he has a medical degree. He thinks he is smarter than us. Which tells us so much about his dark character. He even went as far as to publicly gaslight his own 19-year-old son Emil, right there in front of the entire world. Imagine being that kid, sitting in court, hearing your own dad tell the jury that you are just confused, and that you misheard a direct confession on that FaceTime call. It is just so heartless, and this is important because it shows he will destroy absolutely anyone to save his own skin, even his own flesh and blood. But wait. The most devastating part for his defense was likely when the actual medical community stepped in, when real nurses and fellow doctors explained that his story about the medical bag was a total lie. That was the breaking point. You cannot take controlled substances or sedatives out of a hospital environment like that. It is against federal law, and it proves he was prepared for something very dark on that mountain. All of these pieces together, his massive arrogance, his fake crying, his cruel victim blaming, and his blatant lies about his profession, they did not save him. In the end, his own testimony became the final nail in his coffin. He talked himself right into a dark corner. It was a complete, total, absolute, terrifying disaster for the entire defense team. This really hits different when you realize validation and control can be more dangerous than anger. Someone who refuses to take accountability will rewrite the entire reality just to make themselves the victim, even if it means destroying their own family. What do you guys think happened up on that cliff? Drop your theories below. Does anyone actually believe his testimony? I gotta be honest. I do not know how a jury overlooks those fake tears and that FaceTime call. But trials are wild. I will keep you guys posted as soon as I find out more when the verdict drops. So that is all for today. I really appreciate you guys for sticking with me through this deep dive. This case is just so incredibly disturbing. What do you guys think? Let me know. Thank you for watching the entire video.